Here. All right, back up one step. When Solomon died and the kingdom was divided, remember this? Solomon dies, 10 tribes to the north go down. Well, actually, Solomon's son Rehoboam comes up here and where was he? Came to Shechem, which is up in the hills a little south of us. And 10 tribes says, you better lighten up. Your father was killing us. Solomon had this great empire. In order to do that, he not only taxed the people heavily, but he demanded core V labor of 1 month out of 4. Every able-bodied man had to give 1 month out of 4. Leave home, serve the king. Wow. And the 10 tribes came, said, lighten up, and Rehoboam refused. I think the Book of Solomon was penned originally by Solomon as a wisdom curriculum for his son Rehoboam to train him, but I think Rehoboam slept through some of the lessons for everything we've got there in the record. But Rehoboam does foolishly, and 10 tribes revolt. And remember, the first king of the 10 northern tribes, Israel, is Jeroboam. Remember that? Yes. And Jeroboam starts right out by doing wickedly, and we're going to see that so manifested tomorrow, or day after tomorrow, because he sets up these 2 false idol sites, Dan and Bethel. But you remember what he put there? Specifically, golden calves. And those golden calves, I always think he must have been having his devotions out of Numbers and found something, or Exodus, and found something good about that, those golden calves. But at any rate, the thing to be said, honestly, is that Jeroboam did not break the first commandment. He broke the second commandment. He didn't deny that Yahweh was God, but he said, here, I'll give you, this is a symbol of your God, and your God rides on these. And the second commandment says, don't make any graven image. He high-handedly broke the second commandment, but he was still loyal to Yahweh. That's right. That's why he set up he said, you'll go down and worship. Yeah, that's very good. We'll talk about that over there. That's right. He also said it shouldn't be this hard for you. You shouldn't have to go all the way to Jerusalem. Religion shouldn't cost you anything for everything. So we'll do it here. But my point is that well into the period of the divided monarchy, a later king by the name of Ahab marries Jezebel, and she high-handedly challenges the first commandment. She goes after Yahweh. She wants to obliterate Yahweh worship. And it becomes the great crisis of the divided monarchy. And that's why you have all that ink, all of that long section that tells you about this, because this is the time. Matter of fact, Jezebel set out to replace Yahweh worship with Baal worship and to outlaw Yahweh worship. And how close did she get? Remember when Elijah, she chased the prophet upside down the country. But when Elijah fled from after this incident, you remember he was moaning and he said, I and I alone. And God said, no. You remember? Yep. 7,000. So he got it down to 7,000 in the whole land. There were only 7,000 who had about, by God's count. Yeah, Elijah didn't know about most of those, for heaven's sake. So my point is that it was a serious crisis. And one of the highlights in that grand extended contest between Yahweh and Baal, which becomes a contest between the prophets of God, Elijah and Elisha, and the prophets of Baal, happens up on this hill. Right. Now that's what that statue is remembering, and that's what this Carmelite monastery remembers. This monastery, built by remember that, did you see that name, I don't remember, but it means barefoot. They go barefoot. And it's a significant commitment in these parts. But nonetheless, and we don't know exactly where. This is a high spot. And you remember the story. I won't rehearse it. 1 Kings 18. Elijah encounters Ahab and says, get all the prophets of Baal. See, the Bible says that the prophets of Baal were eating at Jezebel's table. That means it was a state religion. She was providing for them. And so get them all together, got them all together, and had this big challenge. Build an altar, call upon your God. Baal's supposed to be the thunder god, supposed to be able to bring, and lightning and so on. So I asked him to ignite it. Doesn't happen. They're wailing and so on. Then Elijah builds an altar. He takes some oxen, he slays it, he pours water over it, he douses it and so on. And praise to God, and fire falls right near this place. And now remember, this is after a 3.5-year drought. And some people have said, well, how could you find out water and so on? Remember, the Mediterranean is not very far away, and he wants to make this dramatic. He can maybe get an ox cart and can get down there and soak this. But it's right here. Now, the wall is pretty well taken. I'm going to walk you over there in a minute. I want you to see two things when we get a spot in the wall. I want you to get on the wall. Number one, we're able to figure out, matter of fact, we can do it down on the steps for that matter. We're able to figure out the Brook Kishon. It's down there. This is, and the Brook Kishon is going to become important later when Deborah does battle against the forces of Hazor in this area, and they're on horses and chariots, which you can see, this is pretty good terrain until the Brook Kishon overflows its banks and becomes muddy. Remember that? But that's an earlier record. But now we're thinking about Elijah and the prophets of Baal, because the Bible says that he took the 450 prophets of Baal and took them down to the Brook Kishon and slaughtered them there. And the Brook Kishon waters this valley, drains this valley. You can imagine, as the rain comes out of these hills, both north and south, when you get the heavy rain, it's gonna be a torrent, and it makes its way. It's on your, what do you call it here? It makes its way right out the tip of the arrow, right there near Jokium. That's not on your map, but that's the river flows right out through here and out to the Mediterranean. Does that make sense to you? So we'll pick now. The other thing that's always kind of fun. And, well, let's walk over there. Let's walk over and see. I'm going to follow me a little bit, and we'll see down here if we can grab ourselves.
Let's see. Where to stop it?
But it's not. The brook is right in front of it. On the other side of the highway. On the other side of the highway, there comes the Brook Kishon. It winds around here. That, for what it's worth, is the Brook Kishon. Just to get you a feel. Yeah, we're not making it up. See over there? Now, one other thing I think is kind of fun is I want you to stand here and look at that highway that follows. Basically, the highway tends to be close to the hill, so that when the drainage comes, it's kind of on high ground. That makes sense to you when the waters come. So in the ancient world, it probably did. And even though, can we see it in the better now? You can see that there are some hills in the mist, even though you can't see the top of it. But about as far as you can see, as you follow the edge of the hill there, is Jezreel. Jezreel was a place where King Ahab had built a palace. Remember that? Matter of fact, remember Naboth and his vineyard? That's where we're going to stand, right in that area. It's way down there. Now, this is what I want you to pick. Just foolish Naboth, yeah. Jezebel thought, I can get that vineyard. But we'll talk about down there. But here's what I want you to think about as we stand here. Up here in the mountain, after the sacrifice had been consumed, but it had been 3.5 years since it rained. And you remember the priests have been slaughtered, the priests of Baal. So Elijah comes back up here, and Ahab is still up here. And remember, Elijah sends his servant over to look over the Mediterranean and see, do you see anything? No, don't see anything. Sent him 7 times. So 7 times. You know, before I tell you this, I got to tell you one other thing. Yeah. I got to tell you one other thing. All throughout the Old Testament, you have this remarkable phenomenon where the Spirit of the Lord comes upon an individual who's doing an important work in the kingdom and equips him in some remarkable, mundane, physical way. This is what I always say when you think of Samson. If you think of a big muscle-up guy, you got it all wrong. I think he was about 5'2" and had a high voice and a pot belly, and you know was maybe had a pocket protector. You know what I'm saying? But the Spirit of God had come upon him. Well, where'd that come from, for heaven's sake? Well, this is what happens. Finally, the servant comes back and he says, "I see a little cloud about the size of a man's hand." And Elijah said, "You better get out of here. It's gonna rain." Now, you've got to understand the dynamics of these hills. When the rain comes, because now Carmel's not as bad as some, but it's still bad. Well, you guys in California, do I have to tell you this? You know what it is when the rains come on those dry hills, especially when they're dry, and it just pours off. When we moved to California, we moved from, well, we've been in Minnesota, then we've been for a lot of years, and we moved to Texas for a few years. And I remember saying, oh, Santa Clarita. I was going to teach at Master's College. I looked on a map, and there was a river. How nice is this? A river right through the middle of Santa Clarita. probably river walks, and you can rent a boat and so on. I think twice I saw water in that river, you know, the whole time we lived in California. But it's the same way here. So Elijah says, oh, it's going to rain. And he says to Ahab, the king, you better get in your chariot and get home. So Ahab gets his chariot, goes down the side of this hill, and is making his way along that highway. Remember what happens? The Spirit of the Lord comes upon Elijah. Oh, I gotta read this. So you picture it. 1 Kings 18, he has the victory, and then it says it happened in March. Then it came to pass the 7th time that the servant said, there's a cloud as small as a man's hand rising out of the sea. And Elijah said, go up and say to Ahab, prepare your chariot, go down before the rain stops you. I just felt a raindrop. Cue the rain. Maybe we ought to do something. Now it happened in the meantime that the sky became black with clouds. I asked the Lord to give us a little object. And wind, and there was a heavy rain, and Ahab rode away and went to Jezreel. Jezreel's way down there at the end of this valley. And then the next verse says this, the hand of the Lord came upon Elijah, he girded up his voice and ran ahead of Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. So I want you to picture Ahab in his chariot, hot foot, you know, whipping the horses again, and here comes Elijah, on foot, passing, running right by him, you know, ran ahead of him, said, follow me. I always like that picture, all the way to Jezreel. So, Spirit of God can give you some remarkable capacities.
It's a marathon at high speed.
Yeah. All right, any questions up here?